Hello, welcome back to Staff Development Nurse. In this video, I'm going to go over the concept of mapping. We're going to discuss how you do mapping, when you do mapping, and talk about a different way to use it other than a traditional method. So let's get right to it. Mapping is a way for you to visually be able to see the changes that are occurring within your building. Okay, so if you're a visual person, using the mapping technique will be excellent for you. Now, when we talk about mapping, a lot of times we equate it to infection control. And essentially, it's where we use a building floor plan layout to color code different infections that happen throughout the building so that we can visually see it. All right, so what I want to do is I want to jump into a table talk where I'm going to show you exactly how you do the mapping concept. And also, I'm going to discuss with you an alternative way that you can use the mapping concept other than just for infection control. All right, so as you can see here, this is my little makeshift floor plan layout. What you get from maintenance is going to look a lot different from this. So the biggest factor I want you to know is that you don't have to create this. You can go right to your maintenance director and get a copy of the building floor plan from them with no problem. What I would recommend is when you get a copy of that building floor plan that you start to go through and you put on there important information. So for example, you may have some floor plans that don't have room numbers actually listed on the floor plan itself. And so let's pretend this is 301. This is 303, this is 305, and this is 307. And then let's say this is 300, 302, 304, 306, right? So let's pretend I'll put my room numbers on there. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure you capture all the beds in that room. And so what I mean by that, if you have an A bed, a B bed, a C bed, a D bed, you want to capture those beds in the room. So it's very easy. Let's say 301 is a private room. So this is an A bed. Let's say 303 is a shared. I have an A bed and a B bed. Okay, and we're gonna do the same things here. A, B. Let's say 300 is a quad. And, you know, for our purposes, we're just gonna say every other room here is an A bed, okay? So the biggest thing is when you get your floor plan for maintenance, put all this important information on there and save it as a master copy. This way you don't have to constantly go back and forth to maintenance to get a new copy where you have to write all this information back on there again. Keep a master copy for your records that you can easily make copies of yourself. All right. And one major way that we use the mapping concept is with infection control. And this is where we will classify infections and use color-coded systems to identify where it's occurring within the building. So let's get an example of what that looks like. We have highlighters. I'm just grabbing two for this, just to give you an example, an idea of how you do it. So let's say, for example, I'm tracking urinary tract infections, and I color-coded my UTIs are going to be yellow. And let's say my respiratory infections are going to be orange, okay? So you basically classify the different types of infections and you highlight those with a corresponding color. And as you go throughout your month, what you essentially do is you highlight the rooms based off of the infections that you see. So let's say, for example, in 301, oh, they developed a UTI. Then I see that B bed developed a UTI in 303. I see that 305 A and B both developed UTIs as well. And maybe now I'm going to my respiratory infections. I can see that, 300 B bed had a respiratory, 306 had a respiratory, and oh, guess what? 301 also got a respiratory infection this month, okay? So the biggest thing here is, if you notice, now your boxes are going to be a lot smaller than mine. Mine are huge. Yours is probably going to be about this size realistically, depending on your building layout and how big it is. But just notice that I didn't color in the whole entire box. I only covered in a small portion of the box. When you start to get rooms that are smaller on your floor plan layout, you may even start to do dots instead of even drawing the lines. That way, if a person has multiple infections in 1 month, you can clearly see what is going on, right? So just imagine like 306A. I did this whole thing in orange, and then they turned around and had a UTI. And I'm trying to put yellow on top of orange. It just gives me this really funky color, especially if the box is much smaller and it's really colored in really solidly. You're going to miss that when you go back and review this information itself, all right? Other things that you can do as you go through, you're putting this information in place. You can also put dates on here as to when this person was diagnosed with an infection, right? And so I may put on here, 5/27, 5/29, right? As I go through in these infections, and I have this in place. So as you can see, this visually allows you to see where your infections are in the building. It's very helpful versus just looking at linear data. And that's where you have a sheet and you have room numbers, you have residents' names, and you have their infections, like your infection control report. Visually, this gives you a lot more information quickly. I can clearly see what type of infections are spiking up. I can see if there's clusters of infections just because of how the floor plan is laid out. And this will guide me on my infection control path or journey. Putting the dates in here as well is very helpful, because you can see, is this something that is spreading like wildfire? It's a quick reference for me to kind of go back and look at who was working on that floor staffing wise. Was it a break in between for 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden we seen someone else pop up in that same area? Is this one section that one person has? You can get so much information just from this piece of paper that will help you pinpoint where you go next. This is a great tool for infection control. But I also want to talk about an alternative way that you can use that same tool. Again, if you're a visual person, like me, I love visuals, I love color, use it to your advantage. And this is a really great way to track falls, okay? So just like with infection control, right? Infection control, we're looking at infections in general. Falls, I literally can create 3 different sheets for the month, right? I can create one for day, I can create one for evening, I can create one for night. And if you are have 2 12-hour shifts in your building, then you can do just 2 of these papers and just color it in for the month. And most of the time you class their type of falls, right? So was it a roll out of bed? Was it a self-transfer? Right? Was it a staff transfer? These are just like some generalized examples of how you may classify them. And you do the same thing. You highlight, oh, all my roll out of beds are yellow. Oh, this one had a roll out of bed. This one had a roll out of bed. This one had a roll out of bed. And hey, I can even put the dates on here. Oh, 5/27. 5/27. Oh, I had 2 that night. 5/29. Same type of concept, but just visually, how much easier is it to understand the data or even present it to your team to get an understanding of, look, this is how many we had on day, this is how many on evening, and this is how many we had on night. And be able to pinpoint, is it a specific section that we're having an increase in falls in? I have my dates right here so I can reference back to staff. I can look and see how many admissions I got on those days, right? You get a lot of information from this here. So when it comes to mapping, don't just think infection control. It's a great tool for infection control, but you really can use it for anything. We just went over an example of how to use it for falls. You can also use it for medication errors. There's so many different ways that you can use this tool to help benefit you. So I hope that you got great information on the mapping concept and how you can use it outside of just infection control. Be sure to like and subscribe so as I put new videos up, you get the notification, and I can't wait to share with you in the next video. Have a great day, nurses, and keep up the great work.